Welcome to this week's episode of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. Grab a seat at the table as Masters rowing coaches Marlene Royal and Rebecca Caro share their biggest secrets on how to unleash your hidden potential and plot a new course for real results on the water and off. Now, on to the show.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Faster Masters Rowing Radio, where today we are talking about the horizontal drive and what goes wrong and what you can do about it. I'm Rebecca Caro, and I'm joined by Marlene Royal.
Hello, Rebecca, and hello to our Faster Masters Rowing audience.
It's great to be live. It's great to be back. And we're launching into a few episodes now where we're talking detailed technique. We got a really, really nice compliment this week, which Marlene is going to share with you from Pittsburgh.
Yes, well, we would like to say a big hello to the Masters at Three Rivers Rowing Association. I heard through the grapevine that we have a lot of followers there, and they're all super keen on listening to the Faster Masters Rowing Radio podcast, and we appreciate it a ton and want to say hello to everyone. And Three Rivers is a really big club, lots of action going on there, very, very well established club in Pittsburgh, and we just want to say hello to everyone, and we really appreciate your support.
So if you're a live watcher and you're with us now, welcome. It's lovely to have you. But we know that a lot of people listen to this on a recording. So you can get all of our past episodes if you go to fastermastersrowing.com/podcast. They're all there. However, if you want to get a weekly email that not only includes the link to the podcast, it also includes articles and tips and things we're selling and things other people are selling and useful discussions. I know a lot of people like diving in online and joining an online discussion. Do join our newsletter. You'll go to the same website /newsletter, and it comes out once a week on a Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, just in time for the weekend, because we know that a lot of people see their rowing friends at the rowing house at the weekend. So our topic today is the horizontal drive. What do we mean by that? A horizontal drive starts the moment the oar goes into the water, and it stops the minute the oar comes out of the water. Now, the design of a rowing or sculling blade, most people are using hatchet blades nowadays, but even if you weren't, the idea is that the oar depth is such that the top edge of the oar is just a little bit is level with the surface of the water, while recognizing that when you put pressure on the oar, the water piles up a little bit in front of the face of the spoon. So you want to have enough water that you're pushing it and your oar isn't above the surface of the water and it isn't too deep below the surface of the water. Now, there is a lot of physics about how a boat moves through water, and there are certainly people who advocate rowing deep because you better grip on the water and you're less disturbed by what's happening on the surface of the water. But that is a debate for another day. Today, we're talking about the horizontal drive, the idea being that whatever depth your blade goes in, it stays at that same depth until it comes out. And the reason we advocate this is efficiency. You want to have an efficient stroke where you're not wasting any energy or effort changing things, so that all of your power goes into propelling the boat forwards and not slowing it down. So, Marlene, typically what goes wrong with the power phase that makes the drive not horizontal?
Well, I wanted to just add first to your introduction and say why does this matter for everyone, but particularly we're talking to masters. Partly because we are interested in efficiency to move the boat, but we're also interested in stroke length. So you can think of your stroke length in terms of how long does your blade stay in the water at the correct depth? It's going to stay in the water a little bit longer. So what goes wrong is if your blade goes in the water at one depth, then it goes down when your hands are coming up over your knees, and then it comes back up again as you get closer to the release. You're actually shortening the amount of time that the blade is in the water, because the blade isn't traveling horizontal, so it's not maximizing that length. So coming up over the knees is a common place where we are going to see the blade depth changing. So our blade is going vertical in the water instead of staying in the same place. And I like Rebecca's description of that. And I always thought of it like you're putting your blade into an envelope slot that has a bottom, and you want your blade to stay in that slot the entire drive. Another place we commonly see the blade go deep is when you first place the blade in the water. You place the blade in the water, and if somebody is lifting with their upper body or their shoulders, they're going to tend to lift their handle. So the blade's going to go deep, and then it's going to come up again as they get closer to the release.
And of course, the key is first to identify whether you've got a problem in this area. And that's easily solved by having someone on the bank watch you, film you, 3 strokes. We've talked about this often. Have a look at a typical stroke. Do it when you're rowing at low rate, but at pressure, so that you're putting a bit of effort in, and just take a look at what is happening up the shaft of your blade. One way to see whether your blade is going deep is to put a little bit of white tape onto the shaft, so that you can see if that is going under the water and coming up out of the water. So the way to do that is to put the tape at the point where the shaft comes out of the water when the blade is perfectly buried. And you can do that just off the dock. If you have somebody kneeling on the end of the dock and you just sit in your boat, sit your boat level, square your blade, put it in the water, and they should be able to see exactly how far the wetness goes up the shaft.
That's a really helpful visual marker, because when you're in the boat yourself, you have to look and actually see, you can see the water line. So if you see the water lines coming halfway up your shaft, obviously that's an issue, because remember, when we talk about blade work in another episode, vertical blades come in and out of the water a lot easier than a round shaft does. So going deep and not being horizontal on the drive is also going to make it a lot more difficult for you to get your blade out of the water.
Yeah. So you need to know, firstly, are you going deep? And secondly, where and when in the stroke cycle do you typically go too deep? As Marlene said earlier, it may be at the catch, it may be mid-drive, maybe at the finish. There are lots of different places, and you want to sort of say, was that a fluke? Did I just do it wrong once? Or is it something that I'm doing consistently and persistently? So we've established that it's worthwhile getting a horizontal drive. It's also worthwhile figuring out exactly where you get your, let's call it a slightly erratic stroke. The first place to start with a resolution is your rig. What should people be checking, Marlene?
Absolutely checking their oarlock height. I think this is the first place that you want to look. So depending whether you're in a sculling boat or a sweep boat, if you're in a single, you want to be sitting at the finished position, blades squared, and bring your handles to your body, and just where your thumbs are just brushing your ribs. You want to make sure that you're at a comfortable height, that you can keep your forearms parallel with the water. So if you're too high, you're going to see that your handles are high. In order to keep your forearms parallel, you'd have to lift your elbows up, and nobody's going to row lifting their elbows up for an hour. So you want to make sure that you can sit comfortably with weight over the handles, keeping your forearms parallel with the water and your elbows level, and just check that position. And that's the place to start. If you're, as I said, if you're too high, that's going to affect you. If you're too low, that's also going to affect you, because you're when you put the blade in the water, you're always going to be searching for the height that gives you that good connection to the oar handle. And if the height is not correct, you're going to be adjusting the handle and the upper body to try to find that resistance.
So we're talking about the horizontal drive, and we're just going to interrupt to tell you about our next event. We have a very exciting event coming up called the Racing Starts Challenge. And this event is a 3-day free webinar in which we're going to be showcasing exactly how to do a successful racing start. And we are going to be joined by 3 very exciting British Olympians, 1 per day, who are going to talk about their insights into each part of a racing start. And the reason we're choosing internationals is because actually the start is one part of any rowing race where it's exactly the same, whether you're a master, a junior, or an Olympian. And so we're going to get the insights that you want about how to finesse your racing starts starting in May. Look out on our newsletter. We're going to be sending around a link for you to join. If you're watching now, the link is on the screen. You can search on eventbrite.com for Racing Starts Challenge 2023 British Rowing, and you will get all the information that you need. Free to sign up. It starts on the 15th of May at 8 p.m. UK time, and then it will repeat on the 16th, which is a Tuesday, and the 17th. Now, let's get back to our horizontal drive. So we've done what goes wrong. We've talked about visual cues to check where you might have an erratic stroke. Is your oar corrugating up and down through the drive? Is it just going deep at the catch or coming level? Is it going in, going deep, and then coming out again? We've talked about checking your rig. And now we're going to be talking about what you can do about it. So, Marlene, your athlete has identified that they've not got a horizontal drive. Where do they start in terms of trying to solve this problem?
A couple of exercises. One exercise that I often use on the water is 1-finger rowing, and with your middle finger. And so in this exercise, and this is the purpose of this, is to gain awareness of what it feels like to keep the handle level and to keep the blade level. So you come up the recovery, place the blade in the water, make sure your boat is set, place, and you can, this can be done in a sweep boat as well, or in a team sculling boat as well as a single, but place the blade in the water, make sure the boat is set, be very light on the handle, and let the blade just settle in the water. And just draw through. This is, I mean, you can't apply a lot of pressure here, but this is just to gain awareness. Just draw through with your middle finger on the handle through the drive to your body, and follow the handle. Remember that the water will help to set, the water's going to support the blade. So the blade will stay level as long as you allow it to. It's only going to change if you change the handle. So if you think about trying to just follow the path of the handle, that's one way to gain some awareness there of letting the blade stay in one place. When continuous rowing, another exercise that I like is to aim for where your knees were. So when you place the blade in the water, if you are rigged at your correct height, your handle height is going to aim right towards your kneecap when you're at full compression. And the temptation is to lift the body away from the knees as you drive, which is going to lift the handle up over the knees. We call that rowing over the barrel. Instead, you want to think about driving your knees away from your chest. So you're holding your body angle forward a bit, but driving the knees away from the chest, and aim that handle for the level of your kneecaps. Because if you're sequencing correctly, your knees are going to be out of the way by the time the handle reaches that point. But that is a very good marker to aim for in terms of keeping the drive horizontal.
And I'm going to add a third one. So the one that I like, which fits neatly in between the two that Marlene's described, is rowing with your blades along the water on the recovery. So if you sit stationary in the boat and you put your blade flat on the water, you can check your finish height. We've already talked about that. If you then just square your blade, your handle stays at the same height. So when your oar is flat on the water, you know that your blade is at the correct handle height. So what we're going to do then is you move to rowing, normal rowing, but once you've taken the oar out of the water on the recovery, you're going to run the spoon along the surface through the recovery. And while you do that, you watch the handle and you want to pick up a visual cue, a marker of what is the correct height of my handle at the placement. This works particularly well if you're someone who goes deep at the catch. And you might find that it lines up with a crease on the back of the rower in front of you, or on the stern deck. There's a particular part of the deck that you can see. And when you've got your handle at the correct height, it is precisely lined up with maybe the stern post or the steering wires or something like that. So the idea is your handle is going to stay at the same height through the drive and the recovery when you're doing this drill. And that helps you to repattern your movement using your eyes. Remember, us humans have very, very good eyes. Mm-hmm. And so that can also help you work out how high your handle should be during the drive phase by keeping it at that same height in the recovery phase.
Oh, I like that drill. I think, and you know, if somebody is not in the boat and you're on land, you're on an indoor rower, you can work on this. So if there's a, you know, the keyhole or the chain, the hole where the chain or the cable is moving through, you can put, you know, determine the height of your chain by sitting at your finished position and see where the chain is inside the guide. And if you want to work on this, just take 2 pieces of tape, one above and one below, and just, you know, make the space smaller and practice rowing, keeping the handle and the chain level in that spot. So that, and because if you do tend to lift away from your knees when you put the blade in the water, or you tend to lift your hands over the barrel as you approach the knees, this is one way that you can practice this on land. See what it feels like in your upper body, and then take that to the boat.
I like that. That's a great thing. It's an awful lot of rowing works well with very cheap cues like little bits of white tape.
Yes, yeah. Tape is great.
Tape is great. Tape is where we like to be. So if rowing horizontal is a challenge for you, remember, any drill that you do it first slowly to get the pattern of movement. Then make it increasingly harder for yourself, which is either by putting more pressure on or increasing your rate. Or if you're in a crew boat, move from doing it with other people sitting the boat level for you to doing it whole crew. And as you make it harder for yourself, obviously the challenge gets bigger. And when you get tired, you will tend to lose your pattern of movement. So you'll have to concentrate a little more to ensure that you're keeping that. And, you know, it may be that it's just something you have to learn to check regularly while you're trying to repattern. Remember, you'll have done thousands and thousands of strokes in one way, and we're asking you to change now and do it in a different way. But it is worth it. So the benefits, Marlene, just to summarize, of rowing horizontally.
Yes. Well, you're going to improve your stroke length because your blade may be in the water the same amount of time, but your blade is going to move the boat farther if the blade is staying at the same level versus if it goes down and then it comes up, the distance that the blade goes in and the blade comes out is going to be shorter. So you want to think of your stroke length as improving it with the horizontal drive. And more time in the water moves boats. And it's sometimes people are really hesitant to look at their blade because depending where you've learned to row, sometimes when we learned how to row, we were told not to look at our blades or don't look out of the boat. But this is an instance when it's really beneficial that you do look at your oar and you do see what your blade is doing and you start to get some feedback, because the surface of the water, particularly if you're rowing on flat water, is an excellent guide. And if you can look at your blade and keep that top edge of the blade just under the surface of the water and keep it consistent, that's going to give you really good feedback, like match line A to line B and keep it there.
That sounds like a great place to stop. I hope that's been useful. Remember that you can get rowing programs, rowing advice, and coaching advice from us at Faster Masters Rowing Radio.
We are part of the Rowing Chat Podcast Network. Please tell your rowing friends about the show. And if you've learned just one helpful thing from today's episode, please consider supporting the show for as little as $1 per month by visiting fastermastersrowing.com/podcast.